Okay, so we are Control Alt Create, and we decided to team up to address the issue of education about mental health in our community. And because we realize that there have always been many stigmas that surround mental health. So I am a junior at UCA, and I'm from the small town of Pottsville, Arkansas. I hope to get a BFA with an emphasis in graphic design. And right now I'm working at UCA Theater. So I'm getting work experience, building my portfolio, so hopefully that's good.
Well, my name is Chen. I'm a post-bac student who's taking more art classes. My degree was in biochemistry and is sitting on the shelf collecting dust. I'm local, so I have lived in Conway for 12 to 13 years. I'm interested in digital art, but I'm proficient in traditional mediums as well.
So we are part of Lee Zing's Graphic Design 3 class, where we're doing this project to serve the community, and we're using the human-centered design process.
So how do we come up with this challenge? You can see in the picture, I was thinking very hard and I look like I'm constipated. Our team showed an interest in environmental issues as well as health problems, and we compromised on doing a project on mental health awareness. We looked at nonprofit organizations first, and we were drawn to Birch Tree Community, which is a local community that supports the mental health community.
And we were drawn to them because they sold local art to raise money for mental health education, so we thought that was really cool. So we came up with a question: how might we educate the public about mental health problems in Arkansas? And we came up with this. We didn't want it to be too broad, so we couldn't tackle it, but we didn't want it to be too narrow either, because we want to be innovative in this process. And we did multiple types of research starting off to learn more about our topic, because none of us know that much about mental health. I started out with doing popular media research. I thought it would be a good place to start because we could look at what's going on in our own community in the news that pertains to mental health. So some interesting articles I read were about things like funding for mental health services in prisons.
For database research, I utilized UCA's databases to look up common stigmas associated to mental health and some of the more common forms of mental health issues, as well as some historical accounts of mental health issues in successful people.
We came up with a public survey to get some anonymous results from our peers, because this is such a sensitive topic that it's kind of hard to just go out and talk to people about it. So we asked them questions about common myths surrounding mental health. So some of the questions were like, people with mental health problems are often violent, or it is impossible to prevent mental illnesses because they are genetic. So far we have surveyed 34 people, and we hope to give it to more people in the future.
We also conducted 4 expert interviews at UCA's Counseling Center to explore what the Counseling Center offers, as well as these experts' view on mental health. We'll go into more detail about each one later. This is the director of the UCA Counseling Center, Susan Sobel. And she's been in the field for about 20 years, and she indicated that working with students who are still growing both mentally and physically tends to give higher success rate with counseling than you would with community mental health issues. The top 3 issues that most college counseling centers see are anxiety, depression, and relationship issues. When asked about the stigma, this is a direct quote, she said, "I think that over the years, the 2 things have happened. It's become more acceptable and less stigmatized. People do have more knowledge about it. It's not always correct, but it's there. It's become much more acceptable to talk about it, and people are much more willing to admit that they have a problem. There's still a lot of misconceptions, and there is still the attitude that I should be able to deal with this myself, and there's still some stigma that it's just all in your head, or if they can't see something visibly wrong, then you just need to get over it." And when we asked her about generalization of the mentally ill as violent and dangerous, she said yes, which again, that for some people who had mental illness, that is true. And those are where the news stories come from. But for the vast majority of people with a mental illness, even with a very serious mental illness, they're usually harmless.
So here's me interviewing a guy named Alan Thomas. He was an intern at the UCA Counseling Center, and he's been studying for about 9 years, finishing his postdoc and working there. And one thing we noticed, a big difference talking to him, is that he tends to have a younger perspective, and he's really focused on Black people, queer people, multicultural issues, things like that. And we had a lot of fun talking to him about using video games as an emotional outlet and a mental outlet. So we had a lot of things to talk about, common interests. He was really cool. We asked him about the stigma associated with mental illness, and his answer was, absolutely. I think even counselors have it, not for other people, but maybe even for ourselves. And he talked about how it's perpetrated maybe in the media, and that people often have a misunderstanding of terms such as bipolar and schizophrenia. And most of the people we interviewed agreed that the solution is going to be more education for people when we're tackling mental illness, and that the problem is just simply misinformation.
And we also interviewed Jason Ribbon, his staff counselor and clinical coordinator at the center. When asked about the presence of stigma in society, he replied strongly with a hell yes. He does think it's getting less and less, society is more accepting of it, but he's not sure that it can ever be eradicated. He pointed out an issue with miscommunication between those who are suffering from mental health issues and those who are not. When the suggestion was just to deal with it, fake it until you make it, or just keep your head up, it gets better, the intention of the speaker can very well be misconstrued and worsen their mental state.
Another counselor there was named Tina Livingston, and she was really interesting to interview as well because she has so much experience in the field and so many credentials. Yeah, she's licensed. She has a license to practice counseling and supervise interns, and she's on the board of Arkansas Board Examiner for counselors. So basically, she goes around and makes sure that counselors in Arkansas are qualified, and that they're practicing correctly.
And when asked about the stigma, she does believe there's a lot of stigma that we see come from people on TV. She thinks that people need to realize TV is an entertainment and not a reliable source of information most of the time. However, kids won't be able to tell the difference, and that has a huge impact on society.
One quote I found from her that was particularly touching to me is that counseling isn't necessarily for crazy people. Counseling is for that person that just lost their grandmother, or that person who is struggling through a relationship. Counseling is for that person who doesn't know what they want to do in their career even.
And she believes the best solution is, education and communication. Basic word of mouth can make a big difference in the community. And then we have our infographics. This is a project relationship map. I placed mental health stigma in the center, and there are a variety of factors that influence it, or is influenced by it, or vice versa. Some of them negative, some of them positive, some of them neutral. Obviously, resources and education, and there are organizations that can help mental health stigma, but it does tend to have a more negative relationship with public opinion, the media, and also the government sometimes. And the three things that we did, the top right, we did an anonymous survey, so we found the area, the public opinions regarding to the matter. And on the top, we have the immersion method. That's something that we will probably do in the future. And then also we have expert interviews. So we interview professional personnel.
And then I worked on an infographic compiling some of the information I found in the popular media search. One article that really stood out to me was a psychologist herself in Arkansas saying that we're in crisis because Arkansas falls behind a lot of other states when it comes to mental illness. So I included some interesting facts from that, like almost 20% of Arkansas adults have some kind of mental illness, and that is defined by their DSM-4 that they use. And then I started using some other things like it gets a bit small because the format isn't very well for this PowerPoint, but we included statistics from our survey as well, which found that almost 1 in 4 UCA students have know somebody who has been diagnosed with a mental illness. And 2 in 5 students answered that they have had counseling before, which we found surprising and good. Definitely good. So we came up with some challenges as we thought about our problems, and these include how might we discourage generalization done to mental illness in our community,
And how might we decrease the stigma associated with mental illness in our community?
and another one, how might we address the lack of resources for people with mental health problems in our community. And then we brainstormed on solutions to these problems, and we came up with a lot of good ideas. Some of these ideas were silly, like maybe we should slap people when they make assumptions, and then I suggested maybe we have censorship laws. Those are just the crazy solutions.
Then we actually picked out better ones that include promoting better terminology of mental health / illness, showing harms of untreated mental illness, and giving example of people with illness who are successful. So we plan to do this by making distinctions and educating people through advertisements.
So some of our future plans might involve doing things like posters, flyers, brochures about mental illness, maybe even a business card.
Informational business card, and that's it.